The hum of the airplane was steady, almost hypnotic, like a lullaby disguised in machinery, as if the universe itself had decided to cradle me into the sleep I had been denied for far too long. For 2 days straight, I had worked until my body felt like paper ready to tear. The late-night shift at the diner, the early morning hours scrubbing floors in a building that never remembered my face. My hands were raw from bleach, my eyes swollen from sleeplessness, and my soul ached in ways I didn't have words for. By the time I dragged myself through the endless corridors of the airport, clutching a backpack that carried the remnants of my life, I had nothing left to fight with. Exhaustion had already conquered me. I found my seat, narrow and suffocating, but still a kind of refuge. I sat down hard, pressing the straps of my worn bag against my chest, like it could guard the fragile pieces of me still intact. My eyelids burned, heavy with fatigue, but I refused to surrender yet. Around me, life carried on, vibrant and oblivious. Businessmen with gleaming shoes and briefcases, couples whispering secrets into each other's ears, children crying while their mothers shushed them gently. I sat among them, invisible. That was the curse of my existence, to move through a world that rarely saw me, and yet he saw me. At first, I only noticed fragments, as though the man sitting beside me was an image painted in strokes, the crisp cut of his dark suit, far too elegant for coach class, the gleam of an expensive watch at his wrist, a subtle mark of wealth that belonged to another universe. The scent of him was sharp and alluring, cedarwood tangled with smoke, the kind of cologne that whispered of power rather than shouted it. He radiated presence, like gravity itself bent a little toward him. He didn't belong here, that much was certain. I told myself not to stare. I told myself men like him didn't look at girls like me. But when I finally gathered the courage to turn my head, his gaze met mine with a stillness that shattered every defense I had. Dark, steady, assessing, as if he knew me, as if he had been waiting for me. My stomach twisted painfully, and I looked away quickly, pressing my forehead against the cold airplane window. I wanted to vanish. The plane lifted into the sky, the cabin dimming as the rhythm of the engines filled the silence. I fought the weight pressing against my eyelids, the tug of sleep pulling me under. But my body betrayed me. My head tipped, heavy and careless, and instead of meeting the hard plastic of the armrest, it found something else, something warm, steady, alive. His shoulder. My breath caught, panic and embarrassment flaring awake inside me. I should have pulled away. I should have whispered an apology. But then something shifted. His arm moved, not in rejection, but with subtle allowance, adjusting as if he wanted me there, as if I belonged there. My pulse leapt against my ribs, wild and uneven. I dared a glance upward and found his face still, his eyes closed, pretending to sleep, though I felt the quiet tension in him. He was awake, he was aware, and yet he let me stay. In that moment, I didn't know if it was safety or danger I had stumbled into. But my exhaustion was merciless. The warmth was too rare, too healing to abandon. My lashes fluttered closed again, and I promised myself it would be just for a second. Only 1 second. 1 second became silence. Silence became surrender. I drifted, my breath evening, my cheek pressed lightly against the sharp fabric of his suit. For the first time in days, I felt sheltered, as though some invisible storm had paused long enough for me to rest inside its eye. I never noticed the world moving around me, the man behind us slipping an envelope into his hand, the flash of a hidden camera capturing my vulnerable face as it rested against him. I didn't see the deals exchanged in the quiet. I didn't hear the wheels of fate clicking into place. All I knew was the comfort of leaning against a stranger's shoulder and feeling, for the briefest heartbeat, like I was not alone in the world. When the plane landed hours later, I would remember only fragments, the scent of cedarwood lingering in my lungs, the firmness of his frame beneath my cheek, and the way my body, without thought, leaned closer as though it had always known him. I didn't know his name. I didn't know his world. I didn't know that my life, as fragile as it already felt, was about to be rewritten in ink too dark to erase. He sat still beside me, his eyes closed, though inside his mind calculations spun like steel gears. She slept against me, unaware. Her weight was light, fragile, but it anchored me more than oaths sealed in blood. I memorized the curve of her face, the way her lips parted with every soft breath, innocence wrapped in exhaustion. She believed herself invisible, but she was not. She carried bloodlines no one had forgotten, a past she had no idea of. Every rival family would burn the world to claim her, but she was already mine. And in that quiet, while she leaned against me, the strangest thing happened. For the first time in a long life of cold strategy, of fire and violence, I felt something human stir inside me, a longing not born of power, but of presence, a desire not to possess, but to keep. She shifted closer, murmuring something too soft to decipher, and though her lips never formed the words, I felt them anyway. Trust, a fragile, unspoken trust. The seatbelt light flickered. The pilot's voice echoed. We were descending. She would wake soon, and she would wake into a life she didn't choose. But in that fleeting moment, with her head against my shoulder, I let my eyes close, and for once I let myself imagine a world where she had chosen me. The rest of the world could wait. The first thing I felt was the weight of velvet curtains shutting out the daylight, their folds heavy and unfamiliar against the silence. My body ached, as though I had been lifted out of my own life and dropped carelessly into another. For a moment, I couldn't remember where I was. The sheets beneath me were crisp, expensive, cool against my skin. They smelled faintly of smoke and leather, nothing like the cheap detergent I used at the motel, where I sometimes cleaned rooms for extra cash. Panic fluttered at the edge of my chest. I sat up sharply, heart racing, eyes darting across surroundings too perfect, too foreign. Gold-veined marble gleamed on the walls. A chandelier shimmered overhead, scattering fragments of light across the polished floor. A chilled bottle of champagne waited on a table beside two crystal glasses, like an invitation or a taunt. This wasn't my world. This wasn't even a place I could have afforded to walk past, Las Vegas. The memory struck me all at once. The flight, the hum of the airplane, the stranger's shoulder beneath my cheek, the warmth I had surrendered to. My breath hitched as I turned and saw the folder resting neatly on the bedside table. My name was stamped across the top in bold letters. My fingers shook as I reached for it, terrified of what I might find, and yet unable to resist. The photographs spilled out first, glossy and cruel in their clarity. My face, veiled and draped in white silk, standing at an altar beside the man from the plane. his dark suit, his commanding presence, his hand curled around mine as though sealing a promise. Witnesses applauded in the background. My own signature scrawled across a certificate in ink that looked too real to deny. My pulse roared in my ears. No. No, this wasn't possible. I had no memory of any of it. The images mocked me with their detail, every angle perfect, every expression captured. My trembling fingers pushed the papers away, as if distance could undo them, as if rejection could erase them from existence. The door opened, and he walked in. He carried the room with him, every inch of space bending to accommodate his presence. A dark suit again, his steps deliberate, his gaze sharper than knives. He didn't just own the air, he seemed to command it, as though even oxygen would bow to him. "You're awake," he said smoothly, his voice low and rich, dangerous in its calm. I was beginning to wonder if I'd have to kiss you to bring you back to me. I scrambled to my feet, clutching the sheet around me like armor. My voice trembled, breaking against the storm in my chest. "What is this? These photos? They're fake. I never stood in that chapel. I never said vows. I never signed anything." He took his time crossing the room, as though my panic amused him, as though he had all the time in the world. When he reached the folder, he lifted it casually, tapping the forged certificate with 2 fingers. "On paper, Alice Bandandy," he said, my name falling from his lips with disarming ease. "You are mine." "I'm not!" My protest broke sharp, a blade of desperation. "This is fraud. It means nothing." His head tilted slightly, eyes studying me with unnerving calm, as though I were a puzzle he had already solved. "In your world, perhaps," he said softly, "but in mine, perception is truth. Every family, every rival, every ally will believe we are bound. That is what matters." My legs threatened to give way beneath me. I shook my head violently, panic flooding every nerve, every fragile defense I tried to build. "You can't keep me here. I'll go to the police. I'll tell them everything." The corner of his mouth curved, not into a smile, but into something sharper. "And tell them what? That you fell asleep on a plane and woke up married? That you regret the choice your own signature confirms? You'll look unhinged, naive. No one will believe you. No one will save you." Tears burned, hot and humiliating, stinging at the corners of my eyes. I hated that he saw them, hated that his gaze flickered with power at my weakness. I hated more that a part of me, some small frightened part, believed him. He reached out then, his fingers catching my chin, tilting my face upward until our eyes locked. His touch was velvet over steel, gentle in gesture, but unyielding in intention. "You belong to me now," he murmured, his voice threading through me like smoke. "The sooner you accept it, the easier it will be." "I will never belong to you," I spat, my voice cracking, but holding firm enough to stand against him. He let me go slowly, stepping back as though my defiance was nothing new, as though he had heard these words 1,000 times before. And yet his eyes lingered, burning with a fire I couldn't decipher. "We'll see," he said softly. The silence that followed was unbearable. The walls seemed to close in, the chandelier above mocking me with its brilliance. I wanted to scream. I wanted to tear down the velvet curtains and shatter the glass. I wanted to run until my lungs gave out. But the truth lay heavy, undeniable. There was nowhere to go. Not here. Not in this gilded cage he had built with such precision. And worst of all, a part of me feared he was right. I pressed my back against the wall, clutching the sheet tighter, fighting the tears that blurred my vision. I told myself I hated him. I told myself he was nothing but a monster in a suit, a thief who had stolen my life with signatures and lies. But beneath the fury, another feeling betrayed me, quiet and traitorous. The memory of warmth, the memory of his shoulder beneath my cheek, steady and strong, when I had been too exhausted to hold myself upright. The memory of a safety I had no right to crave. I crushed it quickly, burying it beneath rage and denial. I would not bend. I would not break. Yet, as his eyes lingered, unreadable and unrelenting, I felt the iron bars of his world close tighter around me. This is about 1/3 of the way toward 3,000 words. To build it fully, I can expand Alice's perspective, flashbacks to her childhood, her longing for freedom, the inner healing she craves. I can expand Vincenzo's perspective, his calculated but restless feelings, his internal battle between control and unexpected tenderness. Add long, lyrical descriptions of setting. Las Vegas, the luxury suite, the suffocating beauty of her cage. Deepen the dialogue into slower, charged exchanges that show both danger and hidden romance. The mansion rose before me like a fortress carved out of stone and silence. Its gates of iron and gold swung wide without a sound, yet their presence thundered inside my chest, a reminder that I was no longer free. Black cars glided past the manicured gardens, fountains glittered like broken starlight, and marble statues loomed tall, watching me with blank, eternal eyes. To anyone else, this place might have seemed like paradise. To me, it was a gilded cage. The ride from the airport had been silent. I sat beside him, pressed against the leather seat, my arms folded tight across my chest, as though I could build a wall between us. Outside, Naples unfolded in waves of sunlight and shadow, ancient stone and restless sea. I wanted to press my hand against the glass, to feel something real, something that wasn't him, wasn't this trap I'd fallen into. But even the city beyond the window felt unreachable. No one looked at me twice. To them, I was already his. Inside the estate, everything gleamed with careful perfection. Chandeliers dripped from high ceilings, polished wood glowed with quiet pride, and every surface seemed to whisper of wealth. Servants bowed as he passed, their eyes lowered, their lips sealed. When their gazes brushed mine, I caught flickers of pity, curiosity, even fear. They knew who he was, and they believed who I was supposed to be. "This is your home now," he said, his voice a velvet decree that filled the hall. "A gilded cage is still a cage," I snapped back before I could stop myself, my voice trembling with equal parts fury and fear. His mouth curved, not into warmth, but into a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Better gilded than buried." The words cut deep. For a heartbeat I wanted to scream. I wanted to tear down the perfect walls and run until my lungs collapsed. But where would I go? Outside these gates, I was no one. Inside, I was bound to a man whose presence bent the world around him. He showed me a room more magnificent than any dream I had ever dared. Velvet drapes, carved oak furniture, a balcony overlooking gardens that smelled of roses and sea air. Dresses hung in the closet in my exact size, shoes lined in neat rows, perfumes arranged like jewels. He had planned everything, studied me, calculated me, replaced me. My stomach twisted with nausea. When the door closed behind him, the silence roared. I collapsed onto the edge of the bed, clutching the sheets with trembling fingers. I wanted to cry, but the tears caught somewhere deep inside, turning sharp as glass. I stumbled to the balcony doors, flinging them open to gulp air. The night sky stretched endless, the stars cold and bright. Beyond the gates, the world lived on, free, unreachable. "I will not break," I whispered into the dark, wrapping my arms around myself. The words trembled, but I needed them. "He can dress me in silk, surround me with gold, call me his wife, but I will never give him what he wants." Yet as the memory of his eyes on me returned, of his voice whispering that I belonged to him, a shiver betrayed me. Not fear, something more dangerous. Something I refused to name. The next evening he took me into his world. The council chamber smelled of cigars and ambition. Men gathered around a long table of polished mahogany, their voices low, their eyes sharp. They were men who had built empires from silence and blood, men whose hands were not clean and never would be, and every one of them watched me when I entered at his side. I hesitated in the doorway, my heart racing, my hand curling against the silk of the dress someone else had chosen for me. I wasn't the poor girl from the airplane anymore. I looked like I belonged, even if inside I knew I didn't. He guided me forward with a hand at the small of my back, steady, possessive, making his claim clear. "This is my wife," he said, his voice steady as stone. "Alice Dantis." A ripple moved through the room, surprise, suspicion, envy. They had heard whispers, but this was proof. He had bound himself to me, and whether I wanted it or not, they now saw me as his. One of them leaned back, smoke curling from his cigar. "Married in Las Vegas, was it? Quick work, Vincenzo." His jaw tightened, but his smile was cold and thin. "The best decisions are made before anyone else has the chance to interfere." I stood stiffly at his side, burning with anger I couldn't release. His hand slid lower on my spine, a warning, not now. Another man lifted his glass in mock salute. A lovely bride. Fragile, though. You'll need to guard her well. His gaze lingered on me too long, and I felt the urge to shrink, to disappear. But before the shame could consume me, the man beside me spoke, his voice cutting through the room. "She is guarded," he said flatly. "Anyone who doubts that is welcome to test it." The silence that followed was sharp, dangerous. No one moved, and in that silence I felt it, a strange, reluctant thread of safety. As much as I hated his claim, as much as I hated the chains he had wrapped around me, I understood. Without it, I would have been devoured by the wolves around this table. The meeting dragged on. Territories, debts, shipments, the language of power and shadow. I said nothing, but I felt their eyes on me, measuring me, wondering what kind of weakness or strength I would bring. And through it all, his hand remained at my back, a silent reminder that I was his. When it ended, chairs scraped, men muttered farewells, and he pulled me close. "My wife and I will dine alone tonight," he declared. It wasn't a request. The doors closed behind us, and I tore my arm free, spinning to face him. My voice was a blade. "You paraded me like property." His eyes burned with fire as he leaned closer. "Not property. Proof. You are the difference between weakness and dominance in this war, and no one will ever forget whose side you stand on." I trembled, fury sparking in my veins, but his words lodged deep, sharp as thorns. For a moment, I almost hated myself more than I hated him, for understanding that he wasn't wrong. That night, beneath chandeliers and polished stone, I felt the bars of my cage more clearly than ever. And yet, in the heat of his gaze, in the storm of his presence, I felt something else too. Something that unsettled me more than chains or threats. I felt the stirrings of a bond I didn't want, but could no longer deny. This section is written in flowing narration at around 1,600 words so far, the excerpt here. To reach the full 3,000 words, I can deepen. Alice's interior monologue, memories of her old life, how different the Mafia world feels, her yearning for freedom. Vincenzo's POV interwoven, his jealousy, his subtle tenderness even while claiming her. Expansion of the dinner scene, with more tension when another Mafia rival, Matteo, enters, introducing early sparks of the love triangle. Rich, healing imagery of Alice finding small comforts, the stars, the gardens, the rare sense of being seen amid fear. The night air outside the estate was sharp with salt and smoke. I had counted the hours, listening to the footsteps of guards shifting in rhythm, waiting for silence to blanket the halls. My heart beat like a frightened bird inside its cage as I slipped through shadowed corridors, every step a prayer for freedom. The marble was cold beneath my bare feet, and each creak of the floorboards felt like thunder in my ears. I told myself I was brave. I told myself healing begins with escape. But when I finally pressed my hand against the heavy latch of the side door, the truth flooded me. Fear and hope twined together like twin vines. The night stretched wide beyond the iron gates, full of stars, full of promises. Then a voice cut through the darkness. "Leaving so soon?" I froze, breath trapped in my chest. From the shadows, Matteo stepped forward. His jacket was undone, his tie loose, but his eyes gleamed with calculated hunger. He looked at me like I was not a person but a prize. "I can't stay here," I whispered, my voice trembling. "He forged everything. He trapped me. You know this isn't real." Matteo tilted his head as though amused by my desperation. "Oh, I know," he murmured, "and I know how to undo it. Papers can burn. Witnesses can vanish. Freedom can be bought, if you choose the right buyer." Hope flickered for a breath. But then I saw it. The cold glint in his eyes, not of love, but of greed. He didn't want me. He wanted to use me, the way men like them always did. "You don't care about me," I said, my throat tight. "You just want to ruin him." His smile sharpened. "Does it matter? You want freedom. I want vengeance. Our goals align." I stepped back, clutching the doorframe behind me. "I'll find my own way." "I'd rather fight my cage than trade it for another." His hand shot out, fingers curling around my wrist. His voice dropped, velvet over venom. "Don't be foolish, Alice. He'll destroy you. I'll at least let you live." I yanked free, fear and defiance clashing inside me. "I'd rather take my chances with him than be your prize." For a heartbeat, his mask slipped. Anger flickered, but then he chuckled, low and chilling. Brave girl. I wonder how long that bravery lasts. He stepped back into the shadows, vanishing as quickly as he had appeared. I staggered against the door, shaken and breathless. My knees nearly gave out, but I knew then escape wasn't safety. The world outside was just another trap with sharper teeth. I crept back into the mansion, the iron gates laughing at my retreat. Back in my room, I collapsed against the door, tears burning. Maybe I was doomed either way. But one truth whispered inside me, insistent. If I had to choose between cages, I would rather face the devil I knew. I didn't know that he was already waiting. He found me in the corridor, eyes like fire beneath the dim lights. Rage surged in him like a storm barely contained. He seized my wrist before I could hide. "You tried to leave," he said, not a question, but a verdict. "I will not be your prisoner," I spat, though my voice shook. He dragged me close, pressing me against the cold stone wall, his palm braced beside my head, his body caging mine. "Do you have any idea what would have happened if you'd made it past those gates? The Moretti, the Caruso. They'd tear you apart just to hurt me. I want my life back." My words broke into sobs. "I want to breathe without your shadow. I want to be free." His eyes flared, something dark and restless twisting in his chest. "You spoke to him," he growled. "Did you think I wouldn't know? Did you think Matteo offers salvation?" "He doesn't want you. He wants to destroy me, and you nearly handed him the blade." "Better him than you," I whispered, though the words trembled. His hand caught my jaw, tilting my face until our eyes locked. His breath brushed mine, hot and ragged. "Lies. You can say it, but your body betrays you. Even now, your pulse races when I touch you. Tell me you don't feel it, Alice. Tell me your heart doesn't burn with the same fire that's devouring me." Tears spilled down my cheeks. I shoved at his chest, striking with fists too small to wound. My cry tore from my throat, raw and desperate. He caught my wrists, pinning them above my head, his forehead pressed to mine. His voice was jagged, breaking. "Hate me, curse me, but don't you dare give yourself to him. You're mine, Alice, even if it kills us both." The silence between us burned. I trembled beneath him, torn between fury and something far more dangerous. His scent, his fire, his presence pressed in until I could barely breathe. And then, with a shudder, he released me. He stepped back as though tearing flesh from bone. His chest heaved, his fists clenched, control hanging by a thread. "Run if you want," he muttered, voice hoarse. "But understand this. You'll never run far enough." He turned and walked away, leaving me against the wall, shaking, broken, and yet whole in a way I didn't understand. I slid to the floor, clutching my arms around myself, whispering words like a balm, words to keep me alive. I will not break. I will not surrender. I will heal, even here. But deep inside, beneath the fear and rage, another truth flickered, fragile and terrifying. That in his fury, in his obsession, in his raw confession, something in me had begun to answer. And that truth was more dangerous than any chain. This is about 1,700 words of part 4 so far. To expand to 3,000 words, I can add a detailed kidnapping scene, Caruso men storming her chamber, dragging her into danger. Show Vincenzo's desperate rescue, full of tension and fierce emotion. End with their reunion, brutal, tender, and healing in equal measure. The gardens of the Dantes estate had never been so quiet. The roses hung heavy with bloom, their scent mingling with the faint salt of the sea. The fountains whispered in soft arcs of water, and the old cypress trees stood like guardians in the late afternoon sun. For the first time since I had stumbled into his world, no guards shadowed every corner, no enemies lurked beyond the gates. Peace, fragile and trembling, wrapped itself around me like silk. I sat beneath the shade of the tree, my hands folded against my lap, trying to anchor myself in this stillness. The world inside me was anything but calm. My life had been torn apart, rewritten in ink too dark to erase. But today, the tremor in my chest was different. It was wonder, fear, awe. I pressed my hand against my stomach, whispering words that still felt like secrets, even as they spilled into the air. "I'm pregnant." The doctor's voice echoed in my memory, steady and certain. It was early, but undeniable. His child, our child. I thought of the girl I had been, tired, invisible, carrying only the weight of survival. That girl could never have imagined this moment, seated in a palace, bound to a man feared across Italy, carrying the future of his empire inside her. My throat tightened. It felt impossible. It felt inevitable. Would he see this as weakness? Would he see me as fragile, as another piece of property he had claimed? Or would it destroy him, the way love already had? I didn't know. But when I remembered the way he had lowered his blade at my word, the way his voice broke when he confessed he feared nothing except losing me, I knew one truth with the certainty of the earth beneath me. He would protect this child with the same fire he used to guard me. For the first time, I did not feel like a pawn. I felt like the beginning of something new, healing, renewal, a seed of hope planted in the ruins of power and violence. That night, when the moonlight silvered the windows, he found me by the balcony. His eyes caught the way my hands folded over my stomach. Confusion flickered, then realization struck like lightning. He froze. For a heartbeat, the man who commanded armies, who never bent or broke, looked fragile. "Alice," he whispered, his voice breaking. I met his gaze, trembling, afraid of the truth, but unable to hide it. "I'm pregnant. You're going to be a father." His breath left him in a shudder. He sank to his knees before me, not from defeat, not from exhaustion, but from reverence. His hands found my waist, trembling, before rising to rest gently against my stomach. He pressed his forehead there as though he were praying. "A child," he murmured, his voice ragged. "Our child. Proof that everything I've fought for, bled for, has meaning. Proof that I can create instead of only destroy." His eyes lifted, burning with something rawer than power, deeper than obsession. Fear and awe tangled in his chest. "I feared nothing, Alice. Not death, not war. But now, I fear losing both of you." Tears blurred my vision. My hand slid into his hair, grounding him, softening him. "I don't need you to be invincible," I whispered. "I just need you to be here, with us." He rose slowly, pulling me into his arms, holding me with a tenderness that cut deeper than his fiercest vows. His lips found mine in a kiss that was not about possession or power, but about promise. About forever. In that kiss, in the warmth of his embrace, I felt something healing unfurl inside me, like light breaking through storm clouds. The empire outside might crumble one day, enemies might rise again, but in that moment none of it mattered. I had him. Soon we would have our child. For the first time, I wasn't afraid of the future. I was ready to live it. Days passed in fragile harmony. He walked slower beside me now, as if every step was measured to shield me from the world. His eyes, once sharp with calculation, softened whenever they found mine. The mansion no longer felt like a prison. The gardens no longer mocked me with unreachable beauty. They were ours, sanctuary instead of cage. And yet, I knew storms would always wait beyond the gates. Love in a world like ours was never simple. But maybe that was why it mattered. Maybe love, tested by fire and danger, was stronger than love born in peace. One evening, as the sun bled gold across the horizon, he whispered into my hair, "I will not be remembered for my empire. I will be remembered because of you, because of us." His words sank into me like balm, like healing I hadn't known I needed. For once, I let myself believe. And in the quiet of that belief, I leaned into him, into the life we were building, into the dangerous, undeniable truth. Somewhere between fury and fire, I had fallen, and I no longer wanted to escape. If you have read this far, thank you for sharing this journey with me. Stories like these are more than words. They are a way of reminding us that even in the darkest cages, love can grow like light through cracks, and healing can bloom where we least expect it. If this story touched you, even a little, please leave a comment below. Let me know you're here. Your voice matters. And if you found comfort or hope, or even just a spark of feeling in these words, I invite you to like this video and subscribe. It's free, but it means the world. It helps me continue creating stories with heart and soul. Together, let's spread a little more light, a little more healing in a world that needs it.